Imagine a silence so absolute it screams. Before the ticking of the clock, before the spark of the first star, there was only the new, the terrified, churning, primeval waters of chaos. It is a void so deep it would crush the human mind just to look at it. Then, from this infinite abyss, a single hill breaks the surface. A god named Atum rises from the water, not because he was born, but because he willed himself into existence. This isn't just a fairy tale. It is the ancient Egyptian explanation for the very spark of consciousness. But as Atum coughs the air god Shu and the moisture goddess Tefnut into reality, he sets in motion a lineage that will inevitably lead to blood. To understand how this divine family tore itself apart and built the most enduring empire in human history, we must unlock 4 specific doors. Door 1 is the Genesis. Door 2 is the fratricide. Door 3 is the resurrection. And door 4 is the hidden king. Stay with us, because what lies behind door 4 is the invisible force that actually controlled the pharaohs. The genealogy of the gods reads like a map of the universe itself. The air and moisture gave birth to the earth, Geb, and the sky, Nut, creating the physical cage of our world. But the real drama begins with their children, Osiris, Isis, Seth, and Nephthys. These 4 completed the Aeneid, the group of 9 primeval gods that ruled the cosmos. Picture a golden age where the god Osiris marries his sister Isis, and together they rule Egypt in an era of unprecedented peace. The crops grow tall, the Nile flows gently, and the people are fed. But perfection is a fragile thing. Standing in the shadows of this paradise is the 3rd brother, Seth. He watches the adulation his brother receives, and a cold, green envy begins to rot his heart. Seth doesn't just want the crown. He wants to be the only power that matters. The betrayal happens fast, and it is brutal. Seth murders Osiris, but mere death isn't enough for his rage. He desecrates the king's body, hacking it into pieces and scattering the limbs across the land to ensure he can never return. Imagine the horror of Isis, the queen, wandering the riverbanks, her hands covered in mud, searching for the severed fragments of her husband. It is a grim, desperate scavenger hunt. But Isis is not just a grieving widow. She is a master of magic. With the help of her sister Nephthys, the scholar god Thoth, and the jackal-headed Anubis, she achieves the impossible. She reconstructs the body, creating the very first mummy in history. Through this dark ritual, Osiris is resurrected just long enough to impregnate Isis, a final act of defiance against death itself. But the damage to his spirit is too severe to remain in the land of the living. Osiris descends to the Duat, the land of the dead, leaving the throne of the living empty and vulnerable. This creates a power vacuum that Seth is all too eager to fill. He seizes the throne, forcing a pregnant Isis to flee into the marshes. For years, she raises her son, Horus, in hiding, whispering to him the stories of his father's murder, sharpening his mind and body for one singular purpose: vengeance. When Horus reaches adulthood, he emerges from the shadows to challenge his uncle. The war between them is violent and chaotic, a clash of storms and steel that shakes the heavens. But interestingly, this blood feud isn't settled on the battlefield. It ends in a courtroom. The Ennead hosts a divine legal trial to decide the fate of the kingdom. Acting as the judge is Geb, the god of the earth, who looks at the young, hawk-headed warrior and the usurper uncle. The gavel comes down. Geb rules in favor of Horus. The rightful heir takes the throne, establishing the divine bloodline that every future human pharaoh would claim to possess. While this dramatic soap opera of murder and redemption played out, another deity was quietly gathering power in the background. His name was Amun, the Hidden One. Unlike the other gods who represented tangible things, like the earth or the sun, Amun was the invisible force behind all things, the very breath of creation itself. He was the wind you feel but cannot see. As history marched on, Amun did something no other god had done. He began to absorb them. His power grew so immense that he merged with the sun god Ra, becoming Amun-Ra. This wasn't just a merger, it was a monopoly. Amun-Ra became the king of the gods, the chief deity of the empire, and came dangerously close to becoming the sole god of Egypt, reducing all other deities to mere aspects of his infinite power. But even the king of gods must eventually face the question of mortality, and for the Egyptians, death was not the end. It was a terrifying obstacle course. Death is not a destination, it is a trial. Imagine you are an ancient Egyptian soul, stripped of your body, standing naked in a hall so vast the ceiling disappears into shadow. You have survived the terrifying journey through the underworld, dodging monsters and traps. But now you face the ultimate terror, the Hall of Maat. The air is thick with the scent of incense and judgment. Before you sit 42 divine judges, each one staring into the deepest recesses of your memory, waiting for you to deny a specific sin. You must look them in the eye and proclaim your innocence, but words are cheap. The real test happens next. In the center of the room stands a golden scale. On one side, the ostrich feather of truth, light and delicate. On the other side, they place your heart. This is the most dangerous moment of your entire existence. If your heart is heavy with guilt, it will tip the scale, and the consequences are immediate and permanent. Waiting in the shadows is Ammit, a grotesque chimera known as the Devourer. If you fail, there is no hellfire, no eternal torture. Ammit simply eats your heart, and your soul is erased from existence instantly, a cosmic delete button. But if your heart is light, you pass the test, and Osiris, the lord of the underworld, welcomes you into the field of reeds. While Osiris ruled the dead, the living world was dominated by a figure who understood that power is not given, it is taken. Isis, the wife of Osiris, became so beloved that her worship eclipsed that of her husband. She was the mother of every pharaoh, the protector of the kingdom, and the master of healing magic. But beneath this benevolent image lay a mind sharp enough to blackmail the sun itself. In a moment of pure, calculated ambition, Isis decided she needed more power. She crafted a snake from the dust of the earth and sent it to bite the almighty sun god, Ra. Imagine the agony of a god, his veins burning with venom that no ordinary spell could cure. As Ra writhed in pain, Isis offered him a choice: suffer for eternity or reveal his secret true name. Ra broke. He whispered the name, giving Isis dominance over him and enhancing her magic to a level that terrified even the other gods. This act solidified her son, Horus, as the rightful heir to the cosmos. Horus became the lord of the sky, imagined as a colossal falcon, whose right eye was the scorching sun, and whose left eye was the pale moon. When he flew, the downsweep of his wings created the very winds that cooled the Nile. However, every light casts a shadow, and in Egypt that shadow was red. Seth, the murderer of Osiris, was the god of chaos, storms, and the harsh desert. Known as the Red One, he was the embodiment of anger and violence, threatening the fertile green lands with the sterile death of sand. He was the patron of crime, disease, and civil unrest, everything a society fears. But here lies the paradox that makes Egyptian mythology so fascinating. You might think Seth is the villain of this story, yet the universe cannot survive without him. Every single night, the sun god Ra travels through the underworld on his solar bark, and every night a giant serpent named Apophis rises from the darkness to swallow him whole. When Apophis attacks, his gaze is so hypnotic that even the bravest gods freeze in terror. Only one god is immune to the monster's stare. It is Seth. Standing at the prow of the boat, the god of chaos drives his spear into the serpent, repelling the beast and allowing the sun to rise for another day. The villain is the savior. But while the gods fought in the heavens, down on earth, the Egyptians were looking for protection closer to home. But the sun was not merely a passive ball of light. It was a shapeshifter that died and was reborn every 24 hours. To the ancient Egyptians, the solar disk wasn't just a star. It was the body of Ra himself, a god who cried humans into existence from his own tears. In the cool silence of dawn, he was Khepri, the scarab beetle god, pushing the sun above the horizon just as a beetle rolls a ball of mud across the earth. By midday, he transformed into the majestic Ra, sailing across the blue zenith in his solar bark, the king of the heavens. But as the shadows lengthened and the sky turned blood red, he became Atum, the weary creator god representing the setting sun. This wasn't just astronomy, it was a daily resurrection. Ra would die at dusk, enter the terrifying underworld to battle the serpent Apophis, and be rejuvenated at dawn to do it all over again. However, Ra wasn't always the benevolent king. There came a time when he grew old, his bones turning to silver and his flesh to gold, and his human subjects, the very people born from his tears, began to plot against him. They mistook his age for weakness. It was a fatal error. Ra did not send an army to crush the rebellion. He sent his eye. In Egyptian mythology, the eye of Ra is a separate, terrifying entity, a manifestation of the god's wrath that detaches from him to slaughter his enemies. The most ferocious of these was Sekhmet, a lioness goddess of war, whose name literally means the powerful one. Imagine standing in the desert as the wind picks up, stinging your skin with heat. That isn't weather. The Egyptians believed the hot desert winds were the actual breath of Sekhmet. When Ra unleashed her to punish humanity, she didn't just stop the rebellion. She became drunk on blood. Her rage was so intense, so absolute, that she nearly wiped out the entire human race. The myth tells us that Ra eventually had to trick her into drinking beer dyed red to look like blood, just to make her pass out and stop the genocide. It is a chilling reminder that in this pantheon, the protector can become the executioner in the blink of an eye. Yet the eye of Ra had a softer side, proving that the line between a monster and a mother is razor thin. As the eras passed, the ferocious lioness aspect began to evolve. Enter Bastet, a goddess who started as a warrior lioness but transformed into a domestic cat deity. While she still fought the serpent Apophis in the shadows, her claws were sheathed in velvet. She became the guardian of the home, watching over pregnant women and acting as a divine nurse to the pharaoh himself. This duality of violence and nurturing continued with Hathor, another eye of Ra, who took the form of a cow. Hathor was the goddess of female sexuality, motherhood, and joy. So integral to the culture that the pharaoh was often called the son of Hathor. But do not let the imagery of cats and cows fool you. These goddesses were ancient, powerful, and dangerous. Neith, another form of the eye, was a master archer and a war goddess, whom the Greeks would later equate with Athena. She was said to predate creation itself, acting as a mother figure to both the sun god Ra and his arch-nemesis, the serpent Apophis. It seems that in Egypt, even the gods who build the world must also give birth to the monsters that threaten to destroy it. But while these deities fought for dominance in the sky, down on the ground, a different kind of god was quietly inventing the very thing that would allow us to remember them at all. While the sun god battled monsters in the sky, a quiet revolution was happening in the dust of the first capital, Memphis. Here the priests taught that the world wasn't wrestled into existence by muscle, but spoken into reality by a mind. Ptah, the patron god of craftsmen, was the ultimate architect who conceived the universe in his heart and gave it form through his tongue. He was the sculptor of the earth, molding the planet on a potter's wheel, and the inventor of the arts, proving that for the Egyptians, creativity was the closest a human could get to divinity. But no matter how beautiful the creation, it eventually rots. This is where the jackal enters the frame. Anubis, the god of embalming, was the silent guardian who stood between the corpse and the chaos of decay. He wasn't just a grim reaper, he was the first surgeon, the one who wrapped the broken body of Osiris to create the first mummy. He watched over the embalming booths, where the dead were turned into statues of eternity, and he protected the sacred canopic jars that held the liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines. But his most terrifying role was in the Hall of Judgment. It was Anubis who adjusted the scales, weighing the heart against the feather of truth, deciding in a single heartbeat if a soul would be immortal or if it would be eaten. Yet none of this, not the wars, not the trials, not the kings, would matter if no one remembered them. Enter Thoth, the ibis-headed god of writing, knowledge, and the delicate art of balance. His origin is a bizarre paradox. Myths say he was born from the forehead of Seth, the god of chaos, proving that wisdom often springs from the headache of conflict. Thoth was the ultimate bureaucrat of the cosmos. When Horus and Seth tore each other apart, it was Thoth who healed the injured eye of the rightful king. He invented hieroglyphs, giving humanity the power to freeze time with ink, and served as the scribe of the gods, recording every reign, every year, and every verdict in the afterlife. Standing quietly by the scales of judgment, he noted the result of the weighing of the heart, his pen determining the finality of existence. He ensured that even in death there was a record. Here is the subversive twist that changes everything you think you know about these animal-headed idols. We look back at the Egyptians and see a culture obsessed with death, building massive stone triangles just to house corpses. But we are wrong. They didn't worship death. They were so devastatingly in love with life that they refused to let it end. They built a system where the villain, Seth, was necessary to protect the hero, Ra. They realized that a world without chaos is a world without growth. The irony is that in their desperate attempt to freeze the present, they invented the tools, writing, medicine, architecture, that built the future. We are still living in their afterlife. This brings us to the mirror on your wall. You are fighting the same ancient war every single day. You have a Seth in your mind, the chaos, the procrastination, the self-sabotage. But you also have a Thoth, the part of you that seeks order, knowledge, and legacy. Most people try to kill their inner Seth, but the Egyptians teach us that you shouldn't kill the monster. You should put him on the boat to fight the snakes for you. You need your shadow just as much as your light. So this leaves us with a final binary choice, a question that has no right answer, but defines who you are. If Anubis stood before you right now with his scale, offering you a choice, would you choose a life of perfect, safe, eternal balance where nothing ever changes, or a short, chaotic existence filled with the brilliant pain of being truly alive? Do you want the stone pyramid, or do you want the fire? Tell me your choice in the comments below. And if you want to survive the next collapse of history, make sure you are subscribed to witness what happens when the gods go silent.